Jake Morrison had exactly 17 minutes to catch the last bus home when he spotted her, a young woman in desert camouflage, 8 months pregnant, standing alone at the rain-soaked bus stop with tears streaming down her face and a duffel bag that looked like it held everything she owned in the world. What he did next would save 2 lives, destroy a family secret, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is exactly the right thing. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and when this story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Let's begin. The rain fell like bullets on the cracked pavement of Route 9, each drop exploding against the asphalt with the kind of fury that made smart people stay indoors. But Specialist Sarah Martinez wasn't smart people right now. She was desperate people, the kind who stand at bus stops at 11:47 p.m. with nowhere left to go. Her uniform clung to her swollen belly, the fabric dark with rain and something that might have been tears. The bench was broken, tilted at an angle that made sitting impossible, so she stood with one hand pressed against the small of her back and the other clutching a discharge paper that was dissolving in the downpour. Jake pulled his Honda Civic to the curb without thinking, the way you grab a falling glass before your brain catches up to tell you it might shatter. Through his passenger window, he could see her shoulders shaking, not from cold, though the October air bit with winter's promise, but from something deeper. Something that made his chest tighten with recognition that he'd been that alone once. Different circumstances, same hollow ache. Hey, he called through the cracked window, rain immediately spattering his face. You okay out there? She turned, and he saw eyes that held too much for someone who couldn't be older than 22. Dark eyes, red-rimmed, set in a face that was trying hard to be strong and failing just enough to be human. I'm fine, she said, the way people say they're fine when fine is the last thing they are. Jake killed the engine. The rain drummed against his roof like impatient fingers, and somewhere in the distance, a semi-horn wailed through the night. He should have driven on. He had his own problems, a custody hearing in the morning, an ex-wife who'd already painted him as the unreliable one, a 7-year-old daughter who still asked when daddy was coming home for good. But something about the way this soldier stood, straight back despite the weight she carried, chin up despite the tears, reminded him of every time he'd wanted someone to stop, to notice, to give a damned. He stepped out into the rain. When's the last bus? He asked, water immediately soaking through his work shirt. Already missed it. Her voice was steady, controlled. Military training, maybe, or just the kind of strength that comes from having no other choice. Next one's not till morning. Where you heading? She hesitated, and in that pause, he heard a whole conversation she wasn't having with someone who wasn't there anymore. Was supposed to be staying with my boyfriend's family, she said finally. Turns out they had different ideas about that. The way she said different ideas told him everything he needed to know about the last few hours of her life. Look, Jake said, pushing rain-soaked hair from his eyes. I know you don't know me from Adam, but my daughter's asleep at my place, and I've got a couch that's not much, but it's dry. No strings, no weird stuff. Just a place to get out of this mess until you figure out your next move. She studied his face in the streetlight, and he let her. He looked like what he was, a 34-year-old construction worker with calloused hands, tired eyes, and the kind of face that had learned not to promise more than it could deliver. Why would you do that? She asked. Because somebody did it for me once, he said simply. And because leaving a pregnant soldier in the rain feels like the kind of thing that keeps you awake at night. Thunder rolled overhead, and she flinched. Slightly, one hand moving protectively to her belly. In that gesture, Jake saw something that made his decision for him. Sarah Martinez, she said, extending a hand that was smaller than it should have been for someone wearing combat boots. Jake Morrison. Her grip was firm, soldier strong, but her fingers were ice cold. Come on, let's get you warm. As they drove through the empty streets, rain hammering the windshield, and the radio playing something soft and forgettable, neither of them spoke. But Jake caught her reflection in the passenger window, a young woman staring out at a world that had just gotten a lot more complicated. What he didn't know was that tomorrow, everything he thought he understood about family, loyalty, and the price of doing right would be tested in ways that would either break him or remake him entirely. The house was already changing the moment he turned the key stuck in the lock the way it always did when the weather turned mean. and Jake had to shoulder the door twice before it gave way with a groan that echoed through the small duplex. Inside, the air smelled like the mac and cheese he'd burned earlier and the vanilla candles his daughter Emma insisted made everything more homey. "Emma's probably dead asleep," he whispered, setting Sarah's duffel bag by the door. Kid could sleep through a tornado. But the living room was empty, the TV still flickering with the muted glow of some late-night cartoon. Emma's blanket fort stretched between the couch and coffee table, held up by kitchen chairs and what looked like every pillow in the house. "Dad," a small voice called from inside the fabric cave. "Yeah, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." "Can't." "Thunders. Too loud." A pause. "And you have someone with you." Jake looked at Sarah apologetically. 7-year-olds, he'd learned, were like tiny detectives with supernatural hearing and zero filter. Emma's head poked out from between two striped pillowcases, curls sticking up in every direction, brown eyes wide and curious. She took in Sarah's uniform, her rounded belly, the way she stood dripping in the doorway like a lost bird. "Are you having a baby?" Emma asked with the directness that made adults uncomfortable and other kids instantly trust her. Sarah's hand moved to her stomach. "Yeah, I am." "When?" "Emma," Jake started, but Sarah smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. "Soon. Maybe 6 weeks." Emma nodded solemnly, then disappeared back into her fort. Rustling sounds followed, like a small animal rearranging its nest. When she emerged, she was holding a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. "Mr. Peanuts helps me not be scared," she announced, offering the elephant to Sarah. "He's really good at it." Something shifted in Sarah's face, a crack in the armor that let through something softer. She accepted the elephant with the gravity of someone receiving a state honor. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I haven't had a not scared helper in a while." Jake felt his throat tighten. This was exactly why he was losing the custody battle. He was the kind of father who brought home strays, who let his daughter stay up past bedtime building blanket forts, who thought kindness mattered more than stability. His ex-wife, Melissa, would have called this reckless, dangerous, proof that he couldn't be trusted with their daughter's safety. Maybe she was right. "I should probably go," Sarah said, as if reading his thoughts. "I don't want to cause any." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. He softened his voice. "I mean, it's still pouring. Just give it a few hours. We'll figure something out in the morning." Emma had crawled out of her fort entirely now, studying Sarah with the intensity she usually reserved for nature documentaries. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "That's a good name. Better than Melissa." Jake's blood went cold. "Emma." "Honey, how do you know that name?" "She called earlier, when you were at work. Said she was coming over tomorrow with some man to look at my room and ask me questions." Emma's voice was matter of fact, the way kids delivered devastating news without understanding its weight. She didn't sound happy. The custody evaluation. He'd forgotten. Tomorrow was the home visit, when a court-appointed investigator would tour his house, interview Emma, and decide whether Jake Morrison was fit to keep his daughter even part-time. And now he had a pregnant soldier sleeping on his couch. Sarah must have seen something change in his face because she stepped backward toward the door. "I should really stay." Emma's voice was small but fierce. She'd emerged fully from her fort now, bare feet planted on the hardwood floor like she was claiming territory. "Dad helps people. That's what dads do." "Emma, it's complicated," Jake said, running a hand through his damp hair. "Tomorrow there's going to be a lady coming to decide if I'm safe here." Emma finished. She looked up at Sarah with the kind of directness that cut through adult complications, like a knife through paper. "Are you safe?" Sarah's eyes filled, and she pressed Mr. Peanuts closer to her chest. "I don't know." "Then you should stay," Emma said simply. "Safe people help other people be safe. That's how it works." Jake stared at his daughter, this small person who somehow understood the world better than he did. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed through the night. In 12 hours, everything he'd built would be tested. But right now, in this moment, with his daughter standing in her pajamas holding court in a living room that smelled like burned mac and cheese and vanilla candles, Jake realized something important. Sometimes the right choice and the smart choice weren't the same thing, and sometimes you had to choose who you wanted to be over who you thought you should be. "Okay," he said quietly. "You stay? We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." What none of them knew was that by morning, The rest would include a secret that would change everything, a choice that would define them all, and the kind of love that shows up exactly when the world tries to tear it apart. Emma smiled and disappeared back into her fort, and Jake caught Sarah's eye. "Thank you," she whispered, but Jake had the feeling that before this was over, she'd be the one saving them. Jake woke to the smell of coffee and something that might have been actual breakfast, not the usual burnt toast and prayer that passed for morning in the Morrison household. Sunlight streamed through the living room blinds, painting golden stripes across the hardwood floor where Sarah sat folded into his recliner, Emma curled up beside her like a cat who'd found the perfect warm spot. "She's been teaching me about baby things," Emma whispered when she saw him, as if sharing state secrets. "Did you know babies can hear music from inside?" Sarah's been singing to hers. Sarah looked up, embarrassed. "Sorry," she wanted to know, "don't apologize." Jake's voice came out rougher than he intended, scratched raw by a night of staring at the ceiling and calculating odds. "Emma, honey, why don't you go get dressed? We need to clean up before the mean lady comes to decide if you're a good dad." Emma finished matter-of-factly. "She's not mean, sweetheart. She's just doing her job. Mommy says you're not responsible enough to take care of me." Emma's voice was small, the way kids sound when they're repeating words they don't fully understand but know enough to be hurt by. "Is that true?" Jake felt something crack in his chest. This was what Melissa had been doing, poisoning Emma's mind with doubts, making her question whether the one place she felt truly safe was actually dangerous. "No, baby. It's not true." Sarah watched this exchange with the kind of careful attention that suggested she understood more about broken families than she'd let on. When Emma padded off to her room, Sarah spoke quietly. "How long has this been going on?" 6 months since the divorce was final. Melissa wants full custody, wants to move Emma to Denver with her new husband. Jake slumped into the kitchen chair across from her. "Says I'm too impulsive, too unstable. Says I make decisions with my heart instead of my head. Like picking up pregnant soldiers in rainstorms." Exactly like that. Sarah was quiet for a moment, turning her coffee mug in her hands. Her wedding ring was gone, Jake noticed, but the pale band of skin where it had been told its own story. "What happened to your boyfriend?" he asked gently. "The one whose family was supposed to take you in?" Her laugh was bitter. "Turns out having a baby was fine in theory. Having a baby with someone like me was different." She touched her stomach absently. "His parents took one look at my discharge papers and decided their son could do better." "What's wrong with your discharge papers?" Sarah's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Nothing, if you don't mind military police escorts and charges of insubordination. Apparently, reporting your commanding officer for harassment doesn't make you popular." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "He assaulted you." "He tried. I stopped him. But when you're an enlisted woman and he's a lieutenant colonel with 20 years and a spotless record." She shrugged, but Jake could see the weight of it in her shoulders. "They gave me an honorable discharge to make the problem go away quietly." "Jesus, Sarah, I'm fine," she said quickly, the same lie she'd told at the bus stop. "I've got savings, and there are programs for veterans. I just need to find a place to." The doorbell rang. Jake's blood turned to ice water. Through the front window, he could see a black sedan in his driveway and a woman in a business suit standing on his porch, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Patterson, the court investigator." She was 3 hours early. "Emma," Jake called, his voice tight with panic. "Come here, sweetheart." Sarah was already standing, moving toward the back door. "I'll go. This is exactly what you don't need. Wait." Emma appeared in the hallway, dressed in her favorite purple dress with matching tights that had a run up the left leg. She looked from Jake to Sarah to the shadow beyond the front door, and something crystallized in her small face. "She's here early to catch you doing something wrong," Emma said with 7-year-old wisdom. "That's what Mommy told her to do." The doorbell rang again, longer this time. Impatient, Jake looked at Sarah, then at his daughter, then at the life he was about to lose because he'd done exactly what Emma said dads should do: help people. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I need you to trust me." "Jake, I can't let you, please." He met her eyes. "Emma's right. This is about more than just custody. This is about who we choose to be when it matters." Sarah stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Jake straightened his shoulders, smoothed Emma's hair, and walked to the door. When he opened it, Mrs. Patterson was checking her watch with the expression of someone who'd expected to catch him unprepared. Mr. Morrison, I hope you don't mind, but I had a cancellation and thought we might start early. Of course. Come in. As Mrs. Patterson stepped into the living room, her eyes immediately found Sarah, who stood by the kitchen counter holding a coffee mug like a shield. I wasn't aware you had house guests, Mrs. Patterson said, making a note on her clipboard. This is Sarah Martinez, Jake said steadily. She's staying with us temporarily. Emma stepped forward with the fearlessness that only children possess. Sarah's having a baby, and she needed help. Dad always helps people who need help. That's why he's a good dad. Mrs. Patterson's pen stopped moving. She looked from Emma to Sarah to Jake, and in that moment, Jake realized this wasn't just a custody evaluation anymore. This was a test of everything he believed about family, courage, and the kind of man he wanted his daughter to see when she looked at him. Perhaps, Mrs. Patterson said carefully, we should start with a conversation about household stability and appropriate decision-making. Jake felt the ground shifting beneath his feet, but Emma slipped her small hand into his, and Sarah stepped closer instead of farther away. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, even if it cost him everything. Mrs. Patterson settled into Jake's kitchen like a judge taking the bench, her clipboard positioned just so, her pen clicking with mechanical precision. She was younger than Jake had expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and the kind of smile that never quite reached them. So, Ms. Martinez, she began, her voice honey-sweet with razor edges, how long have you known Mr. Morrison? Sarah's hands tightened around her coffee mug. Since last night. I see. Click. Scribble. And you're staying here because? Because I needed help and he offered it. Sarah's voice was steady, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. MMM. And you're currently how far along in your pregnancy? 32 weeks. Father involved. Sarah's jaw tightened. No. Mrs. Patterson made another note, her expression carefully neutral in the way that meant she was drawing conclusions. Jake felt the walls closing in, each question a nail in the coffin of his custody case. Emma, who had been sitting quietly at the kitchen table coloring, suddenly spoke up. Sarah's baby doesn't have a daddy yet, but that's okay because sometimes families happen different ways. Is that right? Mrs. Patterson turned her attention to Emma with the sharp focus of a hawk spotting prey. And what do you think about having a stranger staying in your house, honey? She's not a stranger. She's Sarah, and she's not staying in our house. She's staying with our family. There's a difference. Jake's heart swelled and broke at the same time. This was exactly the kind of thing that would prove Melissa's point, that he was teaching Emma to be too trusting, too open, too vulnerable to a world that would hurt her. But before Mrs. Patterson could respond, Sarah stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Actually, she said, her voice cutting through the kitchen's tension like a blade. There's something you should know about Mr. Morrison's decision to help me. Jake's blood froze. Sarah was going to tell her about the assault, about the discharge, about everything that would make this situation look 1,000 times worse. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She looked directly at Mrs. Patterson, her chin raised with military bearing. Last night, Mr. Morrison found me at a bus stop. In the rain. I was 8 months pregnant, alone, with nowhere to go. Mr. Morrison didn't know any of this when he offered to help me, Sarah continued. He saw a pregnant woman in trouble and did what decent people do. He helped. And when he found out the truth about my situation this morning, he didn't ask me to leave. He didn't worry about how it would look or what people would think. Mrs. Patterson was staring now, her professional mask slipping. Ms. Martinez, that's quite a serious allegation. It's not an allegation. It's documented fact. I have the paperwork if you'd like to see it. Sarah's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. But that's not why I'm telling you this. She turned to look at Emma, who was watching with wide, serious eyes. I'm telling you this because in the last 12 hours, I've watched Mr. Morrison make breakfast for his daughter, help her with homework that was due 2 days ago, listen to her explain why her teacher is mean, and tuck her in with a story about brave princesses who save themselves. I've watched him worry about whether he's good enough, whether he's doing enough, whether he's the father she deserves. Sarah stepped closer to Mrs. Patterson's chair. I've been in houses where children tiptoe around adults who are too important to be interrupted. I've seen families that look perfect on paper and children who are starving for someone to see them, really see them, the way Mr. Morrison sees Emma. Emma had put down her crayon entirely now, her small face glowing with something Jake couldn't name. You want to know about household stability? Sarah continued. Last night, a 7-year-old girl looked at a stranger in uniform and offered her favorite stuffed animal because she could see someone was scared. She didn't ask permission. She didn't worry about stranger danger. She saw someone in need and did what she'd been taught to do by the man who raised her. Mrs. Patterson was silent, her pen forgotten. That's not instability, Sarah said quietly. That's love in action. That's a father who's raising a daughter to believe that kindness matters more than convenience, that doing right matters more than looking right. She sat back down, her hands folding over her belly. So yes, Mr. Morrison made an impulsive decision last night. He put his own custody case at risk to help someone he'd never met. If that's what you call poor judgment, then I guess we have very different definitions of character. The silence stretched like a held breath. Mrs. Patterson looked at her clipboard, then at Emma, then at Jake, who felt like he'd been turned inside out and rebuilt from the ground up. Finally, Emma spoke into the quiet. Is Sarah going to stay with us forever? Jake looked at this woman who had somehow become their fierce defender, who had put herself between him and judgment without being asked, who had seen the heart of his family in 12 hours when his ex-wife had missed it in 12 years. I don't know, sweetheart, he said honestly, but I hope so. Mrs. Patterson clicked her pen closed and stood up. I think, she said carefully, I've seen enough for today. As she gathered her things, Jake felt the ground shifting again, but this time it felt less like an earthquake and more like a foundation settling into place. What he didn't know was that Melissa was already on her way over, and the real test was still coming. Mrs. Patterson had been gone exactly 7 minutes when Melissa's BMW pulled into the driveway with the kind of aggressive precision that announced trouble. Jake watched through the kitchen window as his ex-wife emerged from the car in full battle armor, power suit, perfect hair, and the expression she wore when she was about to demolish someone's life with surgical precision. Behind her, a man in an expensive suit climbed out of the passenger side. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to choose between groceries and rent. Dr. Richard Blackwell, Melissa's new husband and Emma's soon-to-be stepfather if Melissa got her way. They're early too, Emma observed from her perch at the kitchen table, where she'd returned to coloring with the intense focus she used to avoid thinking about uncomfortable things. Everybody's early today. Sarah stood by the sink, watching the driveway drama unfold. Should I? No. Jake's voice was steadier than he felt. You're part of this family now. We face it together. The doorbell didn't ring. Melissa had kept her key, and she used it now, walking into Jake's house like she still owned it, Dr. Blackwell following in her wake like a perfectly groomed shadow. Jake. Melissa's voice could have frosted windows. We need to talk. She stopped short when she saw Sarah, her lawyer's brain immediately cataloging the scene. Pregnant woman in yesterday's clothes, coffee cups on the counter, the unmistakable domesticity of people who'd shared breakfast. I wasn't aware you were entertaining overnight guests, Melissa said, her tone suggesting Jake had been caught running a brothel. This is Sarah Martinez, Jake said evenly. Sarah, my ex-wife Melissa, and her husband Richard. Sarah stepped forward, extending her hand with military directness. Nice to meet you. Melissa didn't take it. Ms. Martinez, I hope you understand that this is a family matter. Perhaps you could give us some privacy. Actually, Emma piped up from the table. Sarah is family now. Dad said so. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Emma, sweetheart. Dr. Blackwell spoke for the first time, his voice professionally warm in the way that suggested years of managing difficult patients. Your mother and I have some important things to discuss with your father. Why don't you go to your room for a few minutes? Emma looked at him with the kind of direct stare that made adults uncomfortable. I like it better here. Emma, Melissa's voice sharpened. Do as Richard said. Actually, Jake stepped forward. Emma can stay if she wants. This concerns her, too. Melissa's eyes flashed. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Jake. No boundaries. No appropriate adult decision-making. You're turning our daughter into a confidant instead of protecting her childhood. I'm teaching her that she has a voice in her own life. You're teaching her that rules don't matter, that stability is negotiable, that Melissa gestured toward Sarah, that you can just collect strays and call it family. Sarah flinched as if she'd been slapped. Hey, Jake's voice went dangerously quiet. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll what, Jake? Have another emotional outburst? Make another impulsive decision that puts Emma at risk? Melissa pulled out her phone, scrolling to something that made her smile. I already heard about your new house guest from Mrs. Patterson. Pregnant. Discharged from the military. No job, no support system, no father for her baby. She looked up at Sarah with predatory satisfaction. And now she's living with my daughter. Do you see why the court needs to reconsider this arrangement? Dr. Blackwell cleared his throat. Jake, I'm sure Ms. Martinez is a lovely person, but you have to understand how this looks from a stability perspective. Emma needs, don't. Jake's voice cut through the room like a whip. Don't you dare tell me what my daughter needs. Your daughter, Dr. Blackwell said calmly, is about to have a baby brother or sister when Melissa and I adopt. She needs consistency, not a baby. Emma's crayon clattered to the floor. You're having a baby? Melissa's face went pale. This wasn't how she'd planned to tell Emma about the pregnancy. Sweetheart, we were going to discuss this when you came to visit us next week, but you're having a baby and you don't want me to live with Dad anymore. Emma's voice was small, confused. Are you replacing me? Oh, honey, no, but that's what it sounds like. Emma looked around the room at all the adults who were suddenly making decisions about her life. Sarah's having a baby and you want her to go away. You're having a baby and you want me to come live with you instead of Dad. The truth hit the room like a physical blow. In a 7-year-old's logic, the math was simple and devastating. Sarah knelt down slowly, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. Emma, can I tell you something? Emma nodded, tears threatening. Having a new baby doesn't mean throwing away the love you already have. Love isn't like toys that break when you share them. It's like, she paused, searching for words a child would understand. It's like your dad's heart. It's big enough for you and me and whoever else needs a place to belong. But Mommy wants me to come live in Denver because she loves you, Sarah said gently. And your dad fights for you to stay here because he loves you too. And that new baby your mom's having? They're going to love you from the minute they're born because you're going to be the best big sister in the world. Melissa was staring at Sarah like she'd just spoken in tongues. The difference, Sarah continued, is that some people think love means keeping everything the same, safe, and predictable. And other people think love means making room for whoever needs a place to belong. She looked up at Jake, then at Melissa, then back at Emma. Both kinds of love are real, but only one kind of love feels like home. Emma nodded solemnly, then walked over to Jake and slipped her hand into his. I want to stay where love feels like home, she said clearly. Doctor Blackwell shifted uncomfortably. Melissa's carefully planned attack was crumbling, and everyone in the room could feel it. But Jake knew. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And when the real blow came, it would come from a direction none of them expected. The silence in Jake's kitchen stretched like a wire about to snap when Dr. Blackwell's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and stepped toward the window to take the call. Richard Blackwell. Yes, I'm still here. What do you mean, verified? Something in his tone made everyone stop breathing. Melissa's carefully controlled expression flickered, and Jake felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Doctor Blackwell's face went ashen as he listened. Are you absolutely certain? I see. Yes, I understand. No, I'll handle it from here. He hung up and stood frozen by the window, staring at his phone like it had just told him the world was ending. Richard, Melissa's voice was sharp with concern. What is it? Dr. Blackwell looked at Sarah with something that might have been fear. Ms. Martinez, did you say your commanding officer was Lieutenant Colonel Davis? Sarah went rigid. How do you know that name? Because Dr. Blackwell's voice was barely a whisper. He's my brother-in-law. The kitchen exploded into chaos. What? Melissa spun toward her husband. Richard, what are you talking about? Michael Davis. He's married to my sister Carol. Has been for 15 years. Dr. Blackwell sank into a chair like his legs had given out. That was Carol on the phone. She just got word that Michael's been arrested. Military police picked him up this morning on charges of sexual assault and conduct unbecoming an officer. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor, sending ceramic shards skittering across the linoleum. 3 other women came forward after your report, Dr. Blackwell continued, his voice mechanical. Once the investigation started, they found a pattern going back years. Your case broke it all open. Jake moved without thinking, stepping closer to Sarah as she swayed on her feet. You okay? I. Sarah's voice was hollow. They said it would disappear quietly. They said no one would believe me. Apparently someone did. Dr. Blackwell looked up at Melissa, his face gray. Carol's devastated. Their kids. God, their kids don't know yet. Melissa was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. You never told me you had a brother-in-law in the military. It never came up. Carol and I aren't close. She moved to Colorado Springs when Michael got stationed there. We see them maybe once a year at Christmas. He rubbed his face with both hands. This is going to destroy my sister's family. What about the woman he assaulted? Emma's voice cut through the adult anguish like a blade. What about Sarah's family? Everyone turned to look at the 7-year-old who had been quietly absorbing the grown-up conversation with the intensity she usually reserved for nature documentaries. Emma, honey, this is complicated, Melissa started. No, it's not. Emma stood up from her chair, small but fierce. Bad people hurt good people. Good people tell the truth. The truth helps catch bad people so they can't hurt anyone else. She walked over to Sarah and took her hand. You saved other people by being brave. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I didn't feel brave. I felt scared and alone and like I'd ruined everything. That's what brave is, Emma said matter-of-factly. Being scared but doing the right thing anyway. Dad taught me that. Dr. Blackwell was still staring at his phone. I need to call Carol. She's going to need support through this. And the children, Richard. Melissa's voice was carefully controlled. What does this mean for us? For Emma's custody situation? Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Even now, even in the middle of this revelation, Melissa was calculating angles, but Dr. Blackwell looked up at her with something that might have been disappointment. What it means, Melissa, is that I've spent the last 10 minutes watching a woman show more courage and grace than I've seen in any boardroom or courtroom. What it means is that I've watched your ex-husband offer shelter to someone in need without asking what it might cost him. He stood slowly, moving toward the door. What it means is that I'm starting to think Emma's father understands something about family that we've missed. Richard, where are you going? To call my sister. To figure out how to help her through the worst day of her life. He paused at the doorway. And to think about whether the kind of home we're offering Emma is actually better than the one she already has. After he left, the kitchen felt hollow, like the aftermath of a storm. Melissa stood in the middle of the wreckage, her perfect composure finally cracking. This doesn't change anything, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Emma still needs stability, structure, Mom. Emma's voice was gentle but firm. Do you love me? Of course I love you, sweetheart. More than anything. Then why does it feel like you're trying to win instead of trying to love me? Melissa's face crumpled. For the first time since the divorce, Jake saw not his opponent but the woman he'd once loved, scared and trying to control a world that refused to be controlled. I just want what's best for you. I just want what's best for you, Melissa whispered, her voice breaking. I know, Emma said softly, but maybe what's best for me isn't what looks best on paper. She walked over to her mother and took her hand, the same way she'd taken Sarah's. I want to live with Dad, but I also want to visit you and see my new baby brother or sister. And I want Sarah to stay because she makes Dad smile in a way that isn't worried. Melissa looked down at her daughter, really looked at her, and Jake saw the moment when the lawyer in her stepped aside and let the mother take over. When did you get so wise? Melissa asked, kneeling down to Emma's level. Dad says I got it from you. The smart part. He says he just taught me how to use it with my heart instead of just my head. Melissa's eyes found Jake's across the kitchen, and for a moment, the hostility was gone. In its place was something more complicated, recognition, maybe, respect. The custody hearing is next week, she said quietly. I could tell them I want to modify the arrangement instead of seeking full custody. Jake felt his knees go weak. Melissa, joint custody. She stays here during the school year, comes to Denver for summers and some holidays. Melissa stood up, brushing tears from her cheeks. Richard's right. This isn't about winning. It's about what Emma needs. Sarah had been quietly sweeping up the broken mug, but she looked up now. Mrs. Blackwell, can I ask you something? Melissa nodded. Do you think there's room in Emma's life for all of us? The messy, complicated, not perfect kind. A family we seem to be building here. Melissa was quiet for a long moment, studying Sarah's face. Then she surprised everyone by smiling. A real smile, not the lawyer smile she'd worn since walking in. You know what? I think Emma's lucky to have so many people who love her enough to fight for her, even if we're all fighting in different directions. She gathered her purse and keys, then paused at the door. Jake, that thing you do, where you see someone in trouble and just help? I used to think it was your biggest weakness. And now I think it might be why Emma's turning into the kind of person who offers stuffed elephants to scared strangers. After Melissa left, the three of them sat in the sudden quiet of the kitchen, processing everything that had just happened. So, Jake said finally, I guess we're really doing this family thing. Emma grinned. Does this mean Sarah can help me pick out baby clothes for my new brother or sister? Sarah laughed, the first genuinely happy sound she'd made since arriving. I think I'd like that. Jake looked around his kitchen, at the broken mugs swept into a neat pile, at his daughter planning baby shopping trips, at the woman who'd stumbled into their lives and somehow made everything make sense. You know what the funny thing is, he said. Yesterday, I thought I was losing everything. Today, I feel like I'm finding it. But as the afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows, casting everything in gold, Jake realized they'd all found something none of them had been looking for. Yet they'd found home. 6 weeks later, Jake stood in the hallway of St. Mary's Hospital, holding 2 cups of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago and wearing scrubs that a nurse had shoved at him when Sarah's labor started faster than anyone expected. Through the delivery room window, he could see Emma sitting beside the bed, talking to Sarah in the calm, serious voice she used when someone needed her to be brave for them. You can go in, you know, Dr. Patel said, appearing beside him with the kind of smile that suggested good news. She's asking for you. Jake's hands shook as he pushed through the door. Sarah looked exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in hospital blankets. Emma was perched carefully on the edge of the bed, peering at the baby with the wonder of someone seeing magic for the first time. Jake, Sarah's voice was soft, worn out from hours of labor, but filled with something that made his chest tight. Come meet your daughter. My daughter. Sarah's eyes were bright with tears and something that looked like hope. I've been thinking about it for weeks. About what family really means. About who shows up when it matters. She held out the baby, and Jake found himself holding a tiny person who weighed nothing and everything at the same time. This is Maya, Sarah said quietly. Maya Morrison, if that's okay with you. Jake stared down at the baby, at his daughter, and felt his world reorganize itself around this small, perfect human who had somehow made him a father again without him even realizing it was happening. She's beautiful, he whispered. She's perfect. She looks like Sarah, Emma announced with authority. But she has your stubborn chin. Jake laughed, a sound that came from somewhere deeper than he'd known existed. Emma, how can you tell? She's 10 minutes old. I just can, Emma said with 7-year-old certainty. Also, I made her something. She produced a small, carefully wrapped package from her backpack. Inside was a tiny knitted hat in soft yellow, clearly handmade with the kind of crooked stitches that spoke of love rather than skill. I've been working on it during quiet time at school, Emma explained. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me how. She said all babies need something made with love. Sarah's eyes filled again as Emma carefully placed the hat on Maya's tiny head. It's perfect, sweetheart. She's going to treasure it. Really, really. And when she's older, I'll tell her that her big sister made it for her before they even met, because that's what families do. They love each other before they even know each other. A soft knock interrupted the moment. Melissa stood in the doorway, looking uncertain in a way Jake had never seen before. Behind her, Dr. Blackwell held a teddy bear and what looked like a very expensive baby carrier. We don't want to intrude, Melissa said softly. But Emma called and said that Maya was born and she wanted you to meet her, Emma finished. Because she's your granddaughter now too, kind of. The adults in the room went very still. Jake felt something shift in the air, a recognition that they were all standing at the edge of something new and unprecedented and possibly wonderful. Emma, Melissa said carefully, sweetheart, it's not quite that simple. Why not? Emma's voice was matter of fact. Sarah's my dad's family now, which makes her my family. Maya's Sarah's daughter, which makes her my sister. You're my mom, which makes Maya your granddaughter. It's just math. Dr. Blackwell cleared his throat. Actually, from a legal standpoint, there would need to be formal adoption proceedings. Richard, Melissa said quietly. Sometimes 7-year-olds understand things better than lawyers. She stepped into the room slowly, approaching the bed, like someone entering a sacred space. May I? She asked Sarah. Sarah nodded, and Melissa looked down at the baby with the expression of someone seeing a miracle she hadn't expected to believe in. Hello, Maya, she whispered. I'm Emma's mom, which I guess makes me someone who's going to love you very much. Jake felt his throat close up as he watched his ex-wife, this woman he'd spent months fighting, gently stroke his new daughter's cheek with one finger. She's beautiful, Sarah. You did good. We did good, Sarah corrected softly. All of us. This whole messy, complicated, unexpected family we accidentally built. Dr. Blackwell stepped forward, setting the teddy bear on the bedside table. Sarah, I want you to know, my sister Carol is doing well. The kids are in therapy, but they're resilient. And she wanted me to tell you something. Sarah looked up at him, cautious. She said to thank you for being brave enough to speak up, for saving other women from going through what you went through. She said you gave her family a chance to heal from the truth instead of living with a lie. Sarah's hand found Jake's, squeezing tight. I never thought. I thought I was just causing trouble. You were causing the right kind of trouble, Jake said firmly. The kind that makes things better. Emma had climbed carefully onto the hospital bed and was now lying beside Sarah, one small hand resting protectively on Maya's blanket. This is the best family, she announced to the room. We've got a dad who fixes things, a Sarah who's brave, a baby who's perfect, a mom who's learning to use her heart, and a Richard who brings good teddy bears. What about you? Sarah asked, smiling. What are you in this family? Emma considered. This seriously. I'm the one who sees things. Like how Dad needed someone to believe he was good at being a dad. And how you needed somewhere safe to have Maya. And how Mom needed to remember that loving someone means letting them be happy, even if it's not what you planned. The room went quiet except for Maya's soft breathing and the distant sounds of the hospital. Emma, Jake said softly, when did you get so smart? I told you. I see things. She looked around the room at all the adults who had somehow become her family. And I saw that sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to make everything perfect and just let it be good. As the afternoon faded into evening, and visitors came and went, Jake found himself standing by the window holding Maya while Sarah dozed and Emma drew pictures of their family. Stick figures holding hands under a house with a crooked roof and flowers that looked like explosions of color. Melissa approached quietly, standing beside him to look down at the sleeping baby. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For being the kind of father who teaches our daughter that love isn't about keeping people safe from the world. It's about giving them the courage to make the world safer for everyone else. Jake looked at his ex-wife, really looked at her, and saw not his opponent, but Emma's mother, someone who loved their daughter enough to admit when she was wrong. We're going to be okay, he said quietly. All of us. This whole beautiful mess we've made. Yeah. Melissa smiled, reaching out to touch Maya's tiny hand. I think we are. And in that moment, as the sun set over the city and cast the hospital room in golden light, Jake realized that sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you planned. Sometimes love arrives disguised as trouble, and sometimes the best decisions you ever make are the ones that scare you most. 1 year later, Jake stood in his backyard watching Emma push Maya in the little swing he'd hung from the old oak tree, both girls giggling as leaves fell around them like confetti. The duplex looked different now. Sarah had painted the front door bright blue, and flower boxes lined the windows, overflowing with the kind of wild, colorful blooms that made the whole street smile. Higher, Emma. Higher, Maya shrieked with delight, her chubby hands gripping the swing chains with the fearlessness that comes from knowing you're absolutely safe. Not too high, sweetheart, Sarah called from the porch, where she sat grading papers from her new job teaching at the community college. She'd finished her degree online during Maya's naps, determined to build something lasting for her daughter. Remember what we talked about? Calculated risks only. Emma called back with the seriousness of someone who'd been promoted to chief big sister. I've got her, Sarah. Jake smiled, watching his daughters, because that's what they were now, legally and completely. navigate the complicated ballet of growing up together. The adoption papers had been finalized 3 months ago, and Maya had taken her first steps the very next day, as if she'd been waiting for the paperwork to make it official. "You're grinning like an idiot," Sarah said, appearing beside him with a cup of coffee and that smile that still made his heart skip. "I'm allowed. It's been a good year. The best year." She leaned into him, fitting against his side like she'd been designed for that exact spot. "You know what I realized yesterday?" "What's that?" "A year ago, I was standing at a bus stop in the rain thinking my life was over. Today," Maya said dada for the first time, "Emma got an A on her science project about family structures, and my husband brought me coffee in bed." "Your husband who still can't believe you said yes when he asked." Sarah laughed, holding up her left hand where a simple gold band caught the afternoon light. "Best decision I ever made. Second best was getting on that bus stop that night." "You didn't get on the bus. You got in my car." "Exactly. Sometimes the best choices are the ones that scare you most." From across the yard, Emma's voice called out, "Dad." "Sarah, come see what Maya learned." They walked over to find Maya standing at the base of the oak tree, one small hand pressed against the bark, looking up into the branches with the expression of someone planning a great adventure. "She figured out how to climb," Emma announced proudly. "Watch this." Maya took 2 determined steps, grabbed a low branch, and hoisted herself up with the grim determination of a mountaineer. "Maya Morrison," Sarah said in her serious voice, "you get down from there right now." Maya looked at her mother, grinned, and climbed higher. "She's definitely your daughter," Jake said to Sarah. "Stubborn as the day is long." "She's our daughter," Sarah corrected. "And she gets the stubborn from both of us." Jake's phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Richard and I are bringing the baby by Sunday for Emma's birthday party. Fair warning, little James is mobile now and has zero fear of anything. He and Maya are going to be trouble together." "What's that smile for?" Sarah asked, reading over his shoulder. "I'm just thinking about Sunday. Emma's birthday party with both her families. Maya teaching her baby uncle how to get into everything. Richard trying to keep up with 2 toddlers." Jake shook his head. "A year ago, if someone had told me this would be my life, I'd have thought they were crazy. And now I think crazy might be the best way to live." Sarah stood on her toes and kissed him, soft and sweet, and tasting like the promise of all the ordinary, extraordinary days still to come. "Maya Morrison," Emma called from somewhere above their heads. "You're not supposed to be that high." They looked up to find both girls somehow 20 feet up in the oak tree, Maya balanced precariously on a branch that looked far too thin for even a 1-year-old. "How did she get up there?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with the special panic reserved for parents watching their children defy gravity. "I might have helped a little," Emma admitted, "but she really wanted to see the bird's nest." "Emma Morrison," Jake called up, using his serious dad voice. "You bring your sister down from there right now." "Okay, but Maya says she wants to see the whole neighborhood first." As Jake watched his 7-year-old daughter carefully guide his 1-year-old daughter down from a tree that was definitely too high for either of them, he realized something important. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not safe, not predictable, just full of love and laughter and the kind of beautiful chaos that happens when people choose each other every single day. Sarah slipped her hand into his as they watched their girls navigate the tree. With the fearless teamwork of siblings who absolutely trusted each other. "You know what Emma told me yesterday?" Sarah said softly. "What?" "She said families aren't the people you're supposed to love. They're the people you can't help loving, even when they climb too high and scare you to death." Jake squeezed her hand. As Maya finally made it to the ground, immediately followed by Emma, both girls grinning with the satisfaction of a successful adventure. "Smart kid. The smartest. Wonder where she gets it from." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Jake looked around his backyard, at his wife grading papers on the porch, at his daughters planning their next adventure, at the life he'd built not by planning it, but by having the courage to say yes when love knocked on his door in the middle of a rainstorm. And he realized that sometimes the most important decisions you make aren't the ones you think about for months. Sometimes they're the ones you make in 17 minutes at a bus stop, when you see someone who needs help and decide to be the kind of person who stops. Sometimes the family you save is your own. Now, before you go, tell us, how would You rate this story from 0 to 10? Drop that number in the comments below, along with one word that describes how it made you feel. Every comment means the world to us, and your words help us craft the stories that matter most. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another tale of love, hope, and the beautiful chaos of family. Because there's always another story waiting, always another reminder that kindness changes everything. Thank you for spending this time with us, for believing in second chances, and for understanding that sometimes the most extraordinary families are the ones that start with the simplest choice, to care about someone who needs you to care. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your doors unlocked. You never know when love might be standing at a bus stop in the rain, waiting for someone brave enough to stop.